Okay, so here we have our profiled knife. I usually like to draw out the design in the obverse side. So the first thing I'll do is I'll take the profile and a somewhat clean sheet of regular paper, and I'll just trace out the knife that I profiled. And I'll keep this sketch until the very end when the knife is finished. This is my drawing board. It's especially important for when I do more complicated handles, to plan out my pins and to construct my handles. And so I'll kind of sketch where I want the grind line to be, sort of as a general reference, and then sort of mark where I want the front of the handles to go. And so I'll kind of mark that, and then I'll mark about a 1/4 inch back for where I want that to be rounded, how I want that to be rounded, where I want these rounds to terminate. And then when I round out my block of wood, I can line it with that so I know that it's even when I put the scales on, and they're not like that or something crazy like that. So then I'll find my center, and as you can see, this kind of curves, so it's sort of arbitrary what end of this you use to calculate your center. Obviously, the higher up, the further over this way that your center is going to be. So I just sort of kind of go for the center this way. So, you know what they say, measure twice, right? So that's my center line. And unfortunately, because of the way this butt is designed, the center line rarely, well, it shouldn't meet up with the center of the belly, and so you just sort of have to design your lines so that however you place your pins or your handles, it still looks good. So visually your eye is not, oh well, that's not centered because it doesn't line up with this, and then this doesn't look centered because it's not centered with that. So I guess kind of avoid putting stuff directly in the center. So I was at about 110 centimeters, which half is about 55. And so what I'll do now is I'll go about, I think I'm going to do 2 pins, 2 Corby rivets. So I want them on the ends, and so I'll maybe go out 30 millimeters and see how that looks. And yeah, that looks all right. I might go another 5. And it doesn't have to be perfect. As long as these are sort of the same distance, it'll look right. So, and I kind of even want to split the difference on here. And usually I spend a lot of time at this stage sketching it out, especially with a more complicated handle. I think I'm going to do just a single piece of wood for these handles. Usually I do it more complicated, and you can't spend too much time planning this out, because if you just rush into it, you'll definitely regret it later. So, but I think I'm happy with these 2 lines for my 2 Corby bolts. And so what I'll do then is I'll then put the knife back up on the sketch, and I know that these are the lines for my bolts, and so I'll go and I'll line my ruler up with those 2 lines, and I'll scribe a line. And don't be afraid to make it really, really deep. The deeper it goes, the less trouble you're going to have with your drill bit wandering. There. So I've got that. Now I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to find the center of the width of that line. 22. Now the nice thing about having only 2 Corbies is as long as they're center with the width, they're going to look right. When you get into having 3 pins, you can't get all 3 centered on the width because the width changes. And so if you have this line that all your pins are lined up, the center one, it's going to be a lot higher relative to the center of the width, which is okay, but it's just one of those things you've got to think about. So if you happen to have a center punch, that'd be really handy to use right about now. For a long time I didn't have one, and so what I would do is I would just keep the scribe to be really sharp, and then I would just get my 2 lines really deep, and then that sort of had a little thing for my drill bit to hook into. But then I spent a whopping $3 and got myself an automatic center punch, and it's all been good since. There. Okay. Here I am at the drill press, ready to drill these holes. Usually the drill press can seem like a pretty harmless tool, but anything that spins can hurt you. Something will happen. So my rule is always at least safety glasses, because stuff can fly up and you don't want that stuff to get in your eye. So I'm using an 1/8 of an inch drill bit because the shanks on the Corby rivets are an 1/8 of an inch. And sometimes I'll drill dry, sometimes I'll put a little bit of oil on there. It kind of depends how stubborn your metal is. I think I'm going to grab a little bit of oil over here, just because it doesn't hurt. If you don't have a drill press, I highly recommend that you purchase one. They're kind of the things that are hard to live without. You don't need an expensive one. I got this one at Sears for just over $100. But if you don't have one, you still can make knives, and I'll show you the alternative right now. Here I am over at my bench vise. It's another one of those things where if you're going to upgrade your shop from the junkyard tool set from your first knife, definitely get a bench vise. It's probably one of the best things you can get. So you put your drill bit, just a regular drill, and you clamp your knife in there. I probably should have, and I recommend some leather to cushion it, because these jaws will mar up the soft steel. And when you're hand drilling holes, because you're stubborn and you didn't buy a drill vise like I told you to, you can do it with a drill. The trick is a good angle, going slow, and steady pressure, and it should work. just over halfway there. And there you go. Nice 1/8 of an inch hole. You can also see why it's nice to have a drill press.